lesbian vampires. Cool. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It has been a very long time since I posted a video or filmed a video or anything. So if you're still here from back when I was a little bit more regular, thank you. And if you've stumbled on this video, I will hopefully be a lot better. There's been a lot of stuff going on in my personal life for a while. I was in a very big reading slump. I was pretty depressed. I was busy with school. It was crazy, but things are starting to turn around now, and I'm optimistic that I can get on some sort of regular schedule with all of this. But since we are now on May 1st, and I haven't posted a video basically since I think my favorite books of 2023, like the first week of February or something, I figured I'll just do like a quarterly-ish wrap up every book that I've read this year. You will notice that I'm gonna go in like chronological order. You will notice that there aren't that many books. If I was telling you like which month I read them in, it'd be like, that's like 2 books in January or whatever. It's big reading slump. But things are better. I've read way more. I think I've read more books in April than I read in the previous 3 months of the year practically. So things are looking better. It's been a while, so I'm gonna have to like look down at my phone and stuff. Okay, so the first book that I read was actually an audiobook, and I was like, because it was a couple months into the year, or wow, a couple weeks into the year and hadn't finished a book, and I was like, let me just listen to like an easy nonfiction audiobook thing. So I listened to The Gay Agenda by Ashley Malesso and Chess Needham, and that's basically, I would say that it's geared definitely towards like a little bit younger, kind of like teenagers maybe, but it is what it sounds like. It's just kind of a queer history of sorts, like touching on a lot of different historical events and people throughout time. It's definitely, obviously, with history and queer history specifically, very kind of like 19th, 20th century focused, very like white male focused, but they definitely try, as the writers are not both white males, they try to like include more diversity. I just enjoyed it. It was just a light, easy read. I definitely would recommend it for like just kind of a introductory to queer history kind of book, or if you have like a gay cousin who's 15 and wants a book or something, you know, like it's one of those kind of things. Like just fun, easy read, and it felt good to actually like finish something. Then the second book that I read was another audiobook, Beach Read by Emily Henry, and I gave that 4 stars. I started listening to the audiobook of it last summer and then got maybe like 40% of the way through, and it got returned to my library. So I had to like kind of back it up a little bit and remind myself what had happened and start over and actually finish it when the hold came through a second time. But basically this follows January and Gus, and it's an Emily Henry book. It's kind of a formulaic love story, but basically I really liked this one because January's father, before the start of the book, he dies and he leaves her this house, this like lake house in Michigan, where he had kind of like a secret second life is kind of how it's presented, and she finds out all this stuff kind of about who he really was after he died, and so it's a lot of dealing with that. And then Gus's whole thing, they like knew each other in college and kind of hated each other. It was a weird thing. She decided he hated her, so then she was kind of a dick to him or whatever, but he never actually hated her. And I think they were actually like vibing in college. I don't know, the college backstory was whatever, but their romance like in the present I really liked, and he was an Emily Henry male lead, so he was great. You know, like they all kind of blur together to me, like, but I really liked the actual story. Like all of Emily Henry's books are like not romance novels first and foremost. Like, I have some friends who are really into romance novels and they don't love her books because they're definitely more like literary fiction with a romance, but I really love that because I'm not a huge romance reader. And so I really enjoyed all the stuff. It was mostly about grief and family, and I cried. My dad passed away like almost 10 years ago, and so anything about dead dads is just gonna get me. So I really loved it, and I think it actually is my favorite Emily Henry that I've read so far, but I have a good feeling about Happy Place, which I will read maybe this month because it's kind of like a summary book. And I read, well, again, listen to audiobooks. Audiobooks were like saving me in my reading slump. Then I read Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan, which is technically like a Christmassy book, and I probably should have read it in December and I probably would have liked it a little bit more, but this follows the main character whose name I forgot. I read this in February. And it takes place in this small Irish town, and it's kind of a slice of life thing. And it's presented as, everything I heard about it was that it is about like the unwed mother care home type of thing that was going on in Ireland at that time, where kind of these young teenage mothers would be like pregnant teenagers would be sent to like a nunnery kind of thing and like be taken care of, but often there's a lot of like abuse and everything. So I thought it was going to really delve into that, but it was much more kind of dipping into that a little bit and not as much like really getting into it. I thought that the main character, he had like a story of like his mom was kind of went through that thing, so that was like the emotional connection. And I thought his family story was really interesting. I thought like his relationship with like his kids and his wife was really interesting. You could tell there was a lot of love there, but like there were a little bit of like they're kind of struggling and things are kind of sad and all of that. So I really liked Claire Keegan's writing, and I definitely am interested in reading more from her, but I was so bored by this. I gave it 3 stars. I just felt like the thing that I had been told that it was about was barely there, and it was just like this slice of life thing on like a topic I didn't really care about, and the ending was a little, I don't have a problem with like open or ambiguous kind of endings, but I felt like the ending was like a little too open. There wasn't really even like a plan, it seemed like, for what was gonna happen next. But like in the people's lives, I'm sure Claire Keegan herself knows what would happen next. But yeah, but I definitely want to try her again because great writer, beautiful atmosphere. Like I felt like I was there, and the audiobook narrator was really good. I love an Irish accent. So then I read an actual physical book and finished it. It took me almost the entire month of February to read it. But that was You Again by Kate Goldbeck. I gave this 5 stars. This is a Raylo fanfic. And which I don't like Raylo, I don't want to get into it, but no. But it basically follows Ari and Josh, and Ari is kind of, she's bisexual and kind of a wild child kind of vibe, and Josh is very like straight-laced, put together, type A chef guy. And like Ari's whole thing when they meet is they're both like sleeping with the same person. She's like hooking up with her roommate who is like dating him, and so they're kind of like, there's a little bit of like an enemies thing there because they're both like into the same woman. And then they meet each other a couple years later and things have changed and they're both in like serious relationships and all of that. And then they end up meeting again a couple years later when both of those serious relationships have ended, and they're both 2 people just going through grief, and they really like connect and really become friends. So it's kind of enemies of sorts, romantic rivals who, they're just very different people, to friends to lovers, which is my absolute favorite. Like enemies to lovers, I need like a friends stopover in the middle, like really bad, in order for it to work for me. Yeah, what I really loved, and what the thing for me with a lot of romance novels is that it's just these 2 hot people who we're told they like each other, so we go along with it. You know, you're checking off the tropes, you're having a good time. But this, the chemistry from like literally their first meeting is like insane. It's such like, it seems like an opposites attract, but as you get to know them, you find that they actually have so much more in common, and he's got like all these layers and she actually has all these layers, and they're complex, fascinating, funny. I literally laughed out loud reading this book. The sex scenes are kind of hot, and I don't usually find, especially like straight sex scenes, particularly sexy. But yeah, so I really loved it, and I think if you love slow burn romance, and if you like both enemies to lovers and friends to lovers, I think this will check the boxes. And yeah, there was some stuff about like grief, and like Ari's bisexuality is never diminished in any way, and I have a crush on her, and I just really loved it, and I cried multiple times, and I recommend it so hard. If you like Emily Henry, you'll like this. Then my next book, I think actually my next book was a DNF. I started reading The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix, and I got not even that far into it, but it just wasn't connecting with me, and my girlfriend had read it years ago, and I was basically like, if I don't like it at this point, does it get better? And she was like, no. She hated it, but like, so I just dropped it. But then I read a great book. I read Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna McGuire, which is the first in the Wayward Children series, which is basically it's an adult book, but I would definitely say that young adults can read this. Anyone over the age of like, I would have loved this at 14, you know? And it's basically portal worlds, but it follows the children after they return from portal worlds. So, you know, like Narnia or Oz or whatever, blanking on any other ones, but Alice in Wonderland. And then when they come home, and they're all kind of messed up by that portal world. You lived in, sometimes for years, in this magical place, and then you're just supposed to like go back to society. So in this book, it takes place at a school where the kids can kind of go there's like multiple schools in this universe, and some of them are to help the kids like acclimate back to the real world, and some are to help the kids hopefully get back to their world. So this one the goal is to get back to your portal world. And it follows this character Nancy, who she went to this world that kind of reminds me of like Greek mythology, like Hades underworld type of thing, which I think was really interesting because it's kind of like a familiar type of world to most readers. Like, you know, I've seen Hercules, I've read myths, all of that. And she was definitely a good like intro character because like I liked her, but I didn't love her. So you could kind of, she learns about the world and you meet all the characters. The side characters are incredible. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. I can't really tell you much about the plot because it's so short, but there's a mystery in it, and it's kind of messed up, and that's why they're adult books. There's murder and some trigger warnings and stuff like that, but it's really good, and I've read other things by Shauna McGuire, so I knew that I liked her writing, and this, I feel like it has kind of like a voice in it. Oh, the sun just went away. There's like a specific kind of voice in it that I really, really like. And then I'm gonna skip ahead. Actually, this is, I think, almost the second to last book I finished, but it's the next book in the series. So in April, I read Down Among Sticks and Bones by Shauna McGuire. And this I gave 4 stars, and this I gave 5 stars. This follows 2 of the side characters from Every Heart a Doorway, Jack and Jill, who are twin sisters. And it's so good. It's like a prequel mostly. I would say 95% of it is a prequel, and then at the end you get kind of like an update on where they were at the end of this book. It's so cool. Their world is called like the Moors, I think, or something. It's Moors. It's kind of very gothic, and you know, there's like a character that is kind of a mad scientist, Dr. Jekyll type of thing. There's a vampire, there's werewolves, there's like a little village and a castle and all this kind of stuff. And it follows, they kind of, when they get to this world, they like split up. So Jack goes with the scientist and Jill goes with the vampire, which you know from the first book. And it follows them, and as they grow up, and they're there for like, I want to say like 7 years or five to 7 years, something insane like that. And they just live this whole life and have it's just so good. And Jack is, I think the character's like meant to be bisexual, but she just feels like such a lesbian to me. And Jill is just a chaotic little cupcake. If you've read it, you know that that's kind of a weird thing to call her. But yeah, I just really loved it. 5 stars, absolutely incredible. My girlfriend has like read almost all, I think like 6 out of the 8 books or something that are out now. So she's like, read more so we can talk about it. And so I'm trying to like get through them like they're not 200 pages, but yeah, you know, so I really love that, and I'm excited to keep reading the series and seeing, I think they come back. Then I decided to check out some stuff on Kindle Unlimited because I've been paying for that for about a year now and have read maybe 2 books through it. So I needed to get better about that. And I was like, I bet there are like sapphic romance novels on there. Like there's so many romance novels in the world, and it's hard to find really good mainstream like physical copies of like queer in general, but especially sapphic and especially lesbian, and especially anything that isn't like 2 femmes where one of them's like a hot, high-powered businesswoman and one's a college student or something. I feel like I've seen so many of those or whatever. Like lesbians love age gaps, I guess. Age gaps in sports seems to be like the main thing that I find when I'm looking at like physical books or fantasies, but that's obviously totally different. But so then I just started with this like novella that was Shameless by Britt Ryder. I gave it 3 stars. It did exactly what I expected it to. It wasn't badly written. It wasn't groundbreakingly well written. I would read something else by the author. It's literally just butch femme smut. Like, there's a little bit of character work, but it's literally like 200 pages of smut. You know, sometimes you just want to check and see what's out there. I'm not gonna get into this because like members of my family watch this channel. So, but you know, I feel like sometimes smut is like a good way to test the genre and be like, okay, so like, that's what that is like. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I had a good time. It was when I was still in my reading slump, it was really good to just have something that easy and that mindless to read. And yeah, and literally it is like scraping the bottom of the barrel to find butch femme stuff, or butches in general. I would love 2 butches. Then I read one of the hottest books of the year. And I got it through my very special connections to the library that my sister works at. I was like, do you have this book? I can't like place a hold on it online. And she was like, yeah, we have it, like I'll grab it for you. So that was incredible. Bride by Ali Hazelwood, which is my first Ali Hazelwood, and that was a bold one to go with as the first one. It is a paranormal romance. It's her first paranormal romance, and it follows this vampire named Misery, who, there's all this vampire, werewolf, human relations stuff going on, and her whole life was raised with the humans as collateral, which is basically so that if the vampires attack the humans and break the agreements, this child gets killed. It's kind of messed up, but I mean, it makes sense. And they send like a human to the vampires too. So she's raised in the human world. She has like a human best friend, and now there's a situation where the vampires and the werewolves want to have an alliance because like the humans, things are changing politically for the humans. So Misery's father is like the top vampire and wants her to kind of be the collateral again now that she's an adult. She's mid-20s, and marry the alpha of the werewolf pack. And she's like, at first she's like, what the fuck, no. But then her best friend from when she was the human collateral, she goes missing, and the only clue is actually the name of the werewolf that is the alpha. So she agrees to do it, and so like I like that it's like, you know, this is gonna be like a romance novel, but there's also like another plot there. And I've watched so many like videos of people reacting to this book, and I've seen kind of many different positive and negative things, and I gave it 4 stars, I believe. 4.5 stars. And I loved it. But what I think the two sides of it are kind of, people who are coming at it from a romance novel perspective were like, there's kind of too much plot, like political vampire werewolf plot. And then some of the people who were coming at it from like the paranormal worlds, I've definitely seen some of them kind of being like, I don't understand like the way Ali Hazelwood writes. Like she's very kind of like millennial. I'm a millennial, but like everything she says is very millennial. I find it charming as a millennial, but like if you're 22 and expecting people to talk like a fantasy novel, that can be probably a little jarring. And then the other main thing that I've seen people struggle with is that it is Omegaverse, which if you don't know what that is, I would definitely Google it before you read this book. It is, I've been in fandoms my whole life. I've been in werewolf show fandoms and stuff. So it's a common thing that you just see in fan fiction. But there are some things about it, and I would say that this is very light on the Omegaverse stuff. There's the mate bond thing, there's nodding, definitely look that up. But again, I would say that it's mild. It's not anything like what I have seen in fan fiction. And I think in some ways, like, you read so many romance novels and all the smut is the same. And like, at least this was different. I don't know. I really loved it. I loved the whole world building. I loved all the characters. I loved Misery. I loved their romance. I was just like, kiss, kiss. Like, I was just like waiting for it. It's a little slow burn. It's so good. It's enemies to lovers, but like, not really. Like, the two of them don't have a problem with each other. It's just like a bigger thing. And he's kind of an asshole to her at the beginning, but like, that's just kind of what it is. And they kind of become friends and start like working together and have this respect, and then that turns into love, and that's what I love about it. And I really loved it, and there's definitely potential for a sequel, and I would love that. And I'm actually interested in reading more Ali Hazelwood, and that is the second, well, this is not Raylo fanfiction, but like we all know that Ali Hazelwood is writing Raylo fanfiction a little bit always, but like I also liked this as an intro to Ali Hazelwood because Misery is actually tall. Like, she's, I would say probably, I don't know if she says, but she's like almost 6 feet, but then like the werewolf is bigger, but whatever. She's, as long as she's not 5'2" and like a pocket-sized human, that part freaks me out about Ali Hazelwood's book. Anyway, I've been rambling about this werewolf smut for too long, but yeah, I really loved it. But go into it like not expecting like a high fantasy world or like a normal romance novel, you know, like it's a bit of both. It's a little like paranormal romantasy kind of vibe. Then I finished a book that I've been listening on audiobook for like, I want to say I had to renew it again. I think it took me like 6 weeks to get through it, but was Care Work, Dreaming Disability Justice. I listened to it on audiobook. It is basically just a bunch of essays about disability justice with a focus on what they call QT BIPOC, which is like queer, trans, Black, Indigenous, people of color. So a focus on, yeah, the intersectionality of disability justice, the disability justice movement, the history, a lot of discussion on what it is to be like a femme, F-E-M, person who ends up in caretaker roles, what it is to be part of a queer disabled community, how important real accommodations are, how to start support groups and mutual aid and community access and all of that. And I really found it interesting. I have a lot of friends who are disabled. I deal with some chronic pain myself, and I want to be like a therapist, and that will involve a lot of working with disabled people, I assume. And yeah, I just think it's important to know that stuff if it's something you care about. Then I got the ebook of Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. I believe Chanel, I will link her channel, read it, and it was a reread for her. She was like rereading some of her 5-star books, and she loved it again. It is, I'm not sure if it's a young adult or a children's book. The main character is a 13-year-old boy, and I gave that an easy 5 stars. It follows this 13-year-old boy whose name I'm blanking on, and his mom is sick with cancer, and he's having these nightmares about something that we don't really deal with at the end. And then he's also having these, they could also be nightmares or dreams or visions or experiences, or it's very kind of magical realism more than fantasy, I would say, where this yew tree in his backyard like gets up and talks to him and tells him 4 stories, and then at the end he's like, I'll help you, I'll give you what you need or whatever. And it's really, I sobbed, like absolutely sobbed. It's just, yeah, it's just about family and grief. It's very, I would look up trigger warnings if anything I've said is like, oh God, but like, how does it end kind of thing. But I really loved it. And I definitely, as someone who has lost people in her life to cancer or has cancer survivors, or obviously, like I said earlier, my dad died. It's just, yeah, I wish I had had this a decade ago, or, you know, I just think it's really well written and so important. Like, it should be required reading. Yeah, and then I already talked about Down Among Sticks and Bones. And then I got another Kindle Unlimited book called, let me get the full title if I can. No. But Precious Red Pearls by Holly Hawthorne. It's just a sapphic vampire novel. There are definitely some trigger warnings with it, but it follows, I sure can't remember anybody's name. I read it really fast. It's kind of like a novella. I would say it's like 250 pages probably. But it follows this girl who, it's in this fantasy world where they're vampires, and basically they buy people to feed on. It's really messed up. So it starts with her being purchased by the scariest vampire lady ever or whatever, and then it just kind of goes into that. And yeah, it's obviously, it's vampires, and so vampires are always like sexy. And there's like another plot going on and some interesting things around that, like the vampire that buys her, you like originally think she's like the worst vampire ever, like she kills people all the time or whatever, and then you kind of start to learn that maybe your perceptions are wrong. And there's a romance, obviously, and there are points where like you're like, maybe this is just Stockholm syndrome, but I don't think it is. But yeah, it was fun. It was, you know, I gave it, I think, 3.5 it's good. It is what it said it was, and I enjoyed it. And again, nice to have something kind of mindless and a little smutty, and yeah, lesbian vampires. Cool. Next up, The Bullet That Missed by Richard Osman. I've read this like physically and audio book because I really just loved the audiobook narrator. Like, I own this book. I obviously could have read it, but the audiobook narrator is just so good. This is the third book in the Thursday Murder Club mystery, so I can't really tell you that much specifically about this one, but the Thursday Murder Club it follows these, I think they call them like septuagenarians or something, and all the things, like these older people, this group of friends in like a assisted living, independent living kind of community, who have a club where they meet every Thursday and they go over like cold cases and all that kind of stuff, and they end up solving mysteries, and everything single one getting way too involved, risking their 70-year-old lives. One of the main characters, Elizabeth, used to be like a spy with MI5 or 6. I'm not British, so I don't really know the difference. And one of them used to be like he was like always fighting with like the unions. One of them is like a psychiatrist, and the other one is she was just like a stay-at-home mom, but like I'm kind of obsessed with her, Joyce. And yeah, and they just solve stuff. In this one, the cast of like supporting characters, you just like really fall in love with all of them over the course of all the books. It's a lot of like recurring favorites, and they get their little stories, and there's little romances and just all sorts of stuff, and I love all of them. I want it to be like a TV show. I think this would be such a good like BBC mini like show. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4.5. I can't imagine, I gave the first one 5 stars and 2 and 3 both 4.5. I can't imagine giving a single book in the series less than 4.5 because it just makes me feel so good. I just love them so much, and I highly recommend it if you like like Agatha Christie or any sort of cozy mystery, or a lot of the like kind of cozier mystery shows on especially like the BBC and stuff like that. Like, if you like any of that stuff, like, you will love it. And they're funny. The chapters are really short, which I love, because like you can read a chapter if you have 10 minutes. So I love that. It's probably a great book for like moms and dads who are like raising children. Yeah. And then the last book that I finished literally on April 29th was, and I usually don't rate nonfiction unless, basically I only rate nonfiction if it's really, really bad or really, really good. So this one I gave 5 stars, and it is The Writing of the Gods, The Race to Decode the Rosetta Stone by Edward Dolnick. He's a pretty famous nonfiction guy, and I can absolutely see why. I listened to the audiobook, and the narrator of that was also incredible. Hold on, let me see if I can find his name, because he was incredible. And I literally, after finishing it, went to his, like, clicked on his name on Everand, is what I listen to a lot of my audiobooks on, and just like saved other books that sounded interesting that he was doing, because he's so good. Fayir al-Qaisi. And yeah, so what it is kind of in the title, but it tells the story of the decoding of the Rosetta Stone and just hieroglyphs in general. And I've been to the British Museum and seen the Rosetta Stone and cried a little bit. It's just so, I don't know, just such a huge moment in like history for me, and I'm a history nerd. But it tells it in such this interesting way where it gives you some background on linguistics, and talks a lot about like code breaking, and talks a lot about all the different little discoveries that have led to the Rosetta Stone. It delves a little bit into the stealing of ancient things from their homelands by especially the British, and all of that messed up stuff. And the most fascinating stuff is that it turns it, they call it like the race, because it kind of brings these two people, Young and Champollion, I believe his name is, something, I can't speak French. They are like the two people like who kind of are doing the best, because a lot of people before them thought that the pictures represented like words and ideas, and they're the first ones who figure out that they represent like letters and sounds. So that was like a huge, like the turning point in it. And you're like rooting for your favorite. And I really loved it. I was like hooked, and literally telling my girlfriend, like, these are the hot updates about the Rosetta Stone, as if it was happening like now. And I was like following live tweets, you know, but it literally happened in like 1820. But it was incredible. I feel like it makes me, next time I'm in the UK, who knows when that will be, I was kind of like, well, I did the British Museum, I don't need to do it again. But now I'm like, I need to go back there and just like bask in its glory again. And it's so cool. It's like, I mean, how many kids did not have like an Egypt phase or whatever? Like, if you had an Egypt phase and you're looking for a nonfiction book that feels like fiction almost, highly recommend. It's not that long of an audiobook, and it's narrated so well. Yeah, so that was the last book that I read in the first 4 months of the year, and right now I am listening to 2 other audiobooks and dabbling in some physical books. I have some things that I'm maybe working. I haven't picked one. I haven't found the physical book where I'm like, I gotta pick this up. But yeah, so yeah, that is the end of this video, and hopefully there will be more videos. I think I might do, I saw this tag that seems fun as kind of like a way to reintroduce myself to people who forget who I am or are new. And so I'll probably do that next. Who knows? But yeah, let me know what the best book that you read in the last 4 months are. Especially, and give me any recommendations for kind of like, if you have any recommendations for Kindle Unlimited queer books. That's a thing that I'm really intrigued by right now. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, and yeah. I like have completely forgotten how to end these. So bye.